Hey guys, Dr. Snellgrove here, just recording a quick video reviewing Alice Munro's Boys and Girls for our Composition 2 class. And I was actually talking to a class earlier about that this is one of those stories where mechanically very little actually happens. Some students find it a tad boring, that's okay, because there's only so much that, happens in terms of sheer events. Our narrator is a young girl. She's growing up on a farm with her annoying little brother and her two parents. And she is the oldest sibling. So she's responsible for helping her dad out with a lot of the farm tasks, at least until the brother gets a little older. And she very much is a tomboy. She wants to be more like her dad than her mom, who she sees as like trapped in the kitchen. We get to a grim bit of business in the story where there's one old horse that her dad ends up killing and the kids watch. And then there's another horse that is, also scheduled for execution. It's a mare, though, a female. And she has our narrator, kind of an identifying moment with the horse. So when it breaks loose, she's supposed to go run ahead and close the gate. But when the crucial moment comes, she flings the gate wide open. And it's a temporary victory. The horse ends up getting captured and killed anyway. She's sitting at the dinner table at the end. Her little brother, as all little brothers do, rats her out that she's the one that opened the gate, and she's expecting her dad to be really mad at this betrayal. But dad actually dismisses this because she's just a girl. And the narrator, is left at the end not sure what to think, not sure it might even be true, she's thinking. So that's what's going on in terms of just the day-to-day events in the story. Obviously, I wanted us to look a little more deeply at some of the things that are going on because, I said that it's a story where mechanically not a whole lot happens, physically not a whole lot happens, but there is still a lot of things are going on, the interiority of the character in this sort of coming of age story. All right. So the first thing, I guess I'll just cut right to it. I'm looking at my own notes, but there's always a room to rearrange. And I guess it's worth saying that one of the reasons that I assigned this text, it deals with a topic that feels very modern. And that's the idea of gender being like a construct. And that same class earlier, I was joking about it with them that, I say gender is a construct, and it sounds like I'm picking weird phrases out of the internet to something. Some of you might be thinking that, but there's a bit explicitly in the story where the narrator says, a girl was not, as I had supposed, simply what I was. It was what I had to become. So she faces this reality. She is biologically a girl. There's no question about this. But, she identifies with, I want to be more like my dad. And she's starting to realize that society doesn't really want that. Her parents don't really want that necessarily either. And so it's like, it's not enough that I was born a girl. I have to, become a girl, AKA I need to do enough XYZ things that are coded feminine in order to be perceived that way. So this is I just want to let you know that is front and center in the story. It's not just a weird interpretation I'm applying to the text. It is the text. And so there's a lot of things are going on. A typical discussion prompt I'll have with students is to ask, hey, what are some stereotypes that applied to girls then, maybe now even, and how are they portrayed in the story? And so there's a few different instances. I'm kind of skipping around a little bit here, but there's a bit when she sees her mom in the kitchen. I mentioned it's very interesting because it's mom is seen and heard from very briefly in the story, but she kind of looms large because it's like this is what's going to happen to our narrator. This is her destiny, and she has a bit in here where she describes her, the narrator, or young, I say young, like an adolescent, her perception of women's work. It seemed to me that work in the house was endless, dreary, and peculiarly depressing. Work done out of doors and in my father's service was ritualistically important. So this is kind of an important moment here, and it's like, all right, what is her idea of women's work. It's really just what she sees her mom doing, and her mom doesn't really look happy, cooped up in the kitchen. And there's a great moment of reflection in the story, because this is the story written by someone who's looking back on their life, and yet they will very occasionally interject some of the wisdom they have in the present day. And so there's all these descriptions of the mom, like her perceived animosity towards mother. It's like, it seemed to me she would do this simply out of perversity and to try her power. It's like, hey, she sees mom as just trying to get her stuck in the kitchen too. Why are you doing this to me? I want to spend all my time outside. But there'll be this quiet little moment. It did not occur to me she could be lonely or jealous. No grown up could be. They were too fortunate. So that idea that maybe years later she understands that maybe mom was kind of lonely and sad in there. Maybe she wanted a little extra time with her daughter. It wasn't like a mean thing, but still the story is steeped in all of this. It's like, okay, you're not meant to be helping out on the farm. That's boys' work. You're supposed to be in the kitchen. We have a moment, pretty important moment in the story, where it is a quick moment, like a blink and you miss it moment. A feed salesman comes down to the pens to talk to him, and my father said, "Like to have you meet my new hired hand." I turned away and raked furiously, red in the face with pleasure. "Could have fooled me," said the salesman. "I thought it was only a girl." And so again, this is not a slight against Alice Munro, our author. I think she's one of our finest writers. But there's times when the story is just like bonking you on the head very aggressively with its themes. And this is one of those moments where it's like, oh, I'd like you to meet my new hired hand. And the other guy's like, oh, I thought it was only a girl. The notion of, girls doing boys' work, women doing men's work is literally unthinkable, in this society. So it's very, 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 very Barbie-esque, right? It is there. She's being raised in the Mojo Dojo Casa house here. And so she, having seen, perhaps how women are treated, having seen how her own mother is unhappy, maybe in the relationship and her life, it's like, maybe not for me. I just like to be out here with dad, just like to be doing my thing. And so some of the ideas you see her very vividly buck against, I guess, quote unquote, like stereotypes of what girls/women are supposed to be. Like one of my favorite bits, I think the story has a lot of strengths. I think it really, really understands the relationship between siblings, especially when there's a little age gap there. Because the narrator, she has an annoying younger brother, and it talks about they have a little nightly ritual where they would both sing weird seasonal songs out of season. So like the brother would sing Jingle Bells and she'd sing Danny Boy, and kind of like Christmas tunes. And they had a ritual like, oh, you're not safe in this room unless you're on this one little patch of carpet. You can't touch the floor. So the narrator talks about how she has to like stretch out on her bed to turn the light out so her feet doesn't hit the floor. And then when her brother sings himself to sleep, she stays awake and tells stories about herself. And I'll just go ahead and give you this description. We'll talk about it. These stories were about myself when I had grown a little older. They took place in a world that was recognizably mine, yet one that presented opportunities for courage, boldness, and self-sacrifice as mine never did. I rescued people from a bombed building. It discouraged me the real war had gone on so far away from Jubilee. I shot 2 rabid wolves who were menacing the schoolyard. The teachers cowered, terrified at my back. Rode a fine horse spiritedly down the main street of Jubilee, acknowledging the townspeople's gratitude for some yet-to-be-worked-out piece of heroism. Nobody ever rode a horse there, except King Billy in the Orangeman's Day Parade. There was always riding and shooting in these stories, though I had only been on a horse twice. The first because we did not own a saddle, and the second time I had slid right around and dropped under the horse's feet. It had stepped placidly over me. I really was learning to shoot, but could not hit anything yet, not even tin cans on fence posts. So again, this is a section where the story is just like bright neon lights, hey, this is gender issues, gender discourse, the story. because in a vacuum, that she's a tom girl, and her dreams are basically like cowboy dreams. That's what that's what her father and brother and mother would have called them. Where like, yeah, she's swooping into town, she's rescuing people out of bomb buildings, she's shooting wolves, to save her teacher, she's riding horses down the street and dazzling the town folks. And so, nothing at all wrong with these fantasies, of course, but the story, makes it clear. You get these daydreams early on, and then the story makes it clearer and clearer, like this is a world that really doesn't have that kind of future for women in it, not for many years at least. And from her perspective as a young girl, maybe never. So that's part of the tragedy. There is a bit here. I'm going through yeah, here we go. Towards the end, we get an interesting thing where her dreams about herself have changed a little bit. So she has a thing where, like, what do you call it? Her brother, like, no longer wants to sing to sleep. He says she sounds silly, and she stops doing it. He's already stopped doing it. But she still stays awake longer than him and tells herself stories after he has gone to sleep. And this is, again, towards the end of the story. It's like, even in these stories, something different was happening. Mysterious alterations took place. A story might start off in the old way with a spectacular danger, a fire, or wild animals. And for a while, I might rescue people. Then things would change around. And instead, somebody would be rescuing me. It might be a boy from our class at school, or even Mr. Campbell, our teacher, who tickled girls under the arms. Ooh, put that guy on a watch list, right? And at this point, the story concerned itself at great length with what I looked like, how long my hair was, what kind of dress I had on. By the time I had these details worked out, the real excitement of the story was lost. So we get a definite arc in here. We get a definite change in her perspective. So originally she dreams of herself as being the cowboy who rides in and saves people. And now, I mean, we would say probably she dreams of being the damsel in distress that gets rescued by others. Probably a handsome, a handsome rescuer. So she's got a good look good. Now I'm focusing on how my hair looks, what kind of dress I had on. So you get the idea that, she is now over time becoming more girly. And so just to kind of drive the point home a little more, that's another aspect. When we say gender is a construct, some that riles people up sometimes, like, no, it's biological. But everybody knows, I mean, you spend like 2 seconds on the internet. If somebody doesn't present in a certain way, like, oh, if this guy doesn't look like what we have decided a man looks like, or if this gal doesn't look like what we've decided a woman looks like, people are like, oh, wow, what's wrong with them? So there is this idea that, like, okay, masculinity and femininity are separate things from biology, to the point that, of course, this is why the story resonates, I think, so well in our modern times. The idea that someone may present in a way other than, the sex assigned at birth, that kind of thing. That's part of the world that we're living in here. But the story leaves it kind of open-ended, right? About the idea that even before that ugly moment with the dad, I think we have her dreams are changing, and then she let that second horse out when she could have stopped it, and her brother tattles on her because that's what little brothers do, and she's expecting the dad to get mad. He's like, "Never mind," my father said. He spoke with resignation, even good humor, the words which absolved and dismissed me for good. She's only a girl, he said. I didn't protest that, even in my heart. Maybe it was true. And so I've always read this personally as kind of a melancholy ending, because I love that parallelism there. The words that absolved and dismissed me. So the idea, she's got that kid-like mentality, like, dad's pissed. Oh my God, I'm going to get in trouble. And so she's happy when he's not suddenly like, let me take out the bill. It was written a long time ago. It probably had some pretty brutal corporal punishment going on. So she's, of course, relieved when that doesn't happen. But then it's, oh, what is actually absolving her? The fact that he's dismissing her. She's only a girl. as in you are forever limited by your sex. You know, no matter what you want, no matter what you actually practice, get good at doing, you're only a girl. And but one of the things that you can do if you want, you can read the story as, you know, that last bit. I'm always fascinated by it. Maybe it was true. And of course, the melancholy ending. I tend to read the melancholy ending. Sorry, I'm a mopey boy. My Spotify keeps recommending the sad girl playlist to me. I don't know what to tell you. You know, I always viewed that as kind of a glass half empty, sad ending, like she's resigned to society. She wanted to be one way, but society slash her family decided she needed to be another way, and she's just rolling with it. You know, the same thing probably happened to her mom. You know, way back when, some version of that. But there is an idea, like she was already on her own having these changing daydreams where she wants to look like a girly girl, get male attention, you know, be rescued by a handsome, you know, hero, et cetera, et cetera. She's already having this. So maybe this is, you know, something that was always going to happen. The idea that, you know, oh, hey, she's already leading this way. Call it puberty, call it, you know, insight, whatever it is. But, you know, maybe it's just like now going away from being a tom girl to being, you know, we'd call her maybe a trad girl or something at this point. You know, is that inherently a bad thing? I mean, if she's happy, but we have no way of knowing. That's how it ends. You know, I didn't protest that even in my heart. Maybe it was true. All right, so always kind of a sad one there. So I'm trying to go back over this, see if there's any important quotes or anything we didn't get into. Oh, I mentioned this kind of a flyby mention. This story is often described as a coming of age story. And so I was reviewing, again, I keep mentioning the class. I was reviewing with a class earlier. The coming of age story, the idea of it is, you know, it centers on a young person who is, you know, somehow a bit more grown up, a bit more aware at the end of the story than at the beginning. You know, so it's like a coming of age story can't be a static character. The character needs to be changed. And coming of age stories usually deal with the idea that, like, okay, maturity is more than just, you know, how old you are. You know, I think everyone's had that. Everyone has known a young person that's like as mature as like an elderly person. And you've probably known a few old people that had the maturity of children. And so it's like, all right, different things make people more mature. And so there's lots of coming of age stories out there. I asked a previous class to name some, and I was getting things like Bridges of Terabithia, what is it, like Maze Runner. You could consider stuff like Hunger Games, you know, things like that. In my generation, because I'm an old, it was mostly stuff like the movie Stand By Me, which was based on a short story by Stephen King called The Body, where it's like set, I think, in the 50s. These kids hear there's a dead body near the train, and they're like, let's go see it. Yeah, and so they go through a whole lot of misadventures and stuff. But the idea is that, hey, yeah, it's not like they're that much older, like by a few weeks or something at most at the end of the story. But there is that idea they were never quite the same. You know, something happened that they came of age. So this is kind of considered that, like, all right, she's literally probably going through like puberty here near the end is the most like biological read you could have on what is going on. So there's a literal coming of age, but there's also just the idea that maybe letting that horse out was her, you know, canon event moment there of embracing, you know, either resignedly or maybe willingly embracing her, you know, biological gender. Don't know. All right. And yeah, I think I want to say I've gone through. I'm going through. You can't really see. I'm just scrolling through my notes here. It's like I think we hit all the major quotes. We hit all the major prompts. Talking about the gender being a construct. Yeah, changing daydreams. Yeah, I think that's about all of it, guys. So I hope you don't hate this format. I like to upload videos as companion pieces. Of course, we're encouraging you to still read the stuff. There'll be reading responses. There'll be other ways that you engage with the text. But the same thing I do for face-to-face students. I want you, especially if you read something, you're like, what the hell did I just read? I want you to have something here that can hopefully help you out, help you understand it. If you have any questions about any of this, could be the story, about anything else, just feel free to email me. Feel free to text me at 863-835-2399. Y'all have a good one. Bye.